Malcolm Hoenlein's in Israel. He has just spent quite a week in another part of the world. He'll discuss all of that. And we will get to the Prime Minister's visit, etc. We'll get to everything, but we got to start with that, obviously. Don't forget our friends at JewishWorldReview.com. If you're looking for thousands of articles before Shabbos to print out and learn more and more about this amazing world of ours, go to JewishWorldReview.com and enjoy. Malcolm Hoenlein is in Jerusalem, makes our weekly update when that is the circumstance even more special. It's time for our weekly update. Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. Live from Israel, Malcolm Hoenlein. Mr. Hoenlein, welcome back to JM in the AM.
Thank you. Great to be with you. As always, looking over beautiful, sunny Jerusalem. During this week, sometimes the degree difference between New York and here was 30 degrees, 40 degrees, and the weather is supposed to remain nice throughout the coming week. So God willing, it'll be a very productive and beautiful week.
Yeah, today it's about a 50-degree difference, by the way. I mean, till later on. So supposedly later on, we're actually getting into the 40s on this Erev Shabbos. So tell us about your journey. Which countries were you in this week? And describe for us how significant a visit this was.
Well, it was a very significant visit of the delegation of the conference presidents. We went to visit and to celebrate a 20th anniversary of our first official visit in 2006 to Azerbaijan, a country that very few people understand, know where it is, realize its significance. It's the only country that borders on Iran and Turkey, is vital on the Caspian, is the hub for European commerce and transit. It's an energy base. It's got extremely close relations with Israel, and Israel stepped in and helps it. One of the two countries that helped it during the war over Nagorno-Karabakh, which rectified the illegal occupation by Armenia, and now the government of Armenia is working closely with them, and they are supplying gas to Armenia. That is, Azerbaijan is, as they are to Israel. They bought 10% of the Tamir oil field, their Sokar, which is the largest and the major oil and gas industry here, and they also are going to start drilling off the coast of Israel. And in turn, they supply Israel with sometimes 40, even 50% of their imported oil. So it is a vital country. It's a country that gives Israel some strategic depth. It's a country that has 30 million adherents, meaning 30 million Azeris live in southern Azerbaijan, which is a province of Turkey. Of Iran. They have quite a few in Turkey as well, but they have 30 million Azeris living in Iran, and they are a very vital and important force there. So the relationship is very critical. The border between the countries is essentially closed, but there's a lot of interchange because families have relatives on both sides. The country is committed to its relationship with Israel. You can walk on the streets, Nachum, with a yarmulke in a 99% Shiite country, but it's secular Shiism. It's the model for what should be. And when somebody will make a comment about, whether you should wear a yarmulke, all of them say, why are you even asking the question? Wow. There's never been a single anti-Semitic incident. And the people welcome the Jews, and especially Israel, and particularly after the war and their help there, which they greatly appreciate. There's a hero of the war, earlier aspect of the war, who's a national hero, a Jewish Shahid, they call him, and his grave is considered a national monument. Huh. So it's a country contrary to all that you would expect in a Muslim country. Kazakhstan, to a great degree, the same. But here, there's kosher restaurants.
In Azerbaijan?
In Baku, a beautiful kosher restaurant, the Rimon, with absolutely reliable hashgachot, and it's very good food. We were able to have meals through the schools. Chabad also catered some meals, and I'm telling you, we all gained weight during this trip.
Did the 30 million have free passage from Iran to Azerbaijan? Obviously, I'm asking the question because we know about the restrictions when it comes to Jewish people who are in Iran. They don't enjoy free passage. In fact, there was a story that came out this week about a crazy way for a family to actually make it to Israel. I'm sure you saw that. Is there free passage for those 30 million between Iran and Azerbaijan?
No. The borders are essentially sealed. There is communication. I would assume that there is some supplies that cross, but the border is essentially closed. The people there identify as Azeris, as you know. They some people even say the Ayatollah has Azeri ancestry. The president of Iran has Azeri heritage.
So those who have family in Iran don't see them on a regular basis?
No.
And what's the relationship? If Azerbaijan has this, what seems to be, the way you're describing it, an open friendship, if I could use that word, with Israel, what is their relationship with Turkey and Iran?
So that is actually an excellent question, which we posed repeatedly to different people. We had an amazing meeting with the president, whom I've met with many times before. I visited long before we had the official visit of the conference. I was there already in 1999. I met this president's father, who was president of the country. He had been head of the KGB, and when the FSU, the former Soviet Union, broke up, he emerged as the leader, and people thought it would be very bad, but in fact turned out that he tried to rebuild the country, built an oil and energy-based economy, and they're now trying to diversify it. I met with him, and he could not have been warmer or nicer, and invited me to his home for dinner, where I could not eat anything, but we had the best discussion for an hour and a half, and even took me down to his man cave and poured me a drink, which was considered the highest honor that he bestows. And then I was there several times afterward, and many times since, because it's such a vital country, and if people just take a look at the map for 1 second when you can, and see where it's located, on the Caspian, on the borders with Russia, on the borders with Iran, on the borders with Turkey, on and of course with Armenia. And just look at the strategic location, and a country that has practiced moderation. Sheikh al-Islam ala Shukr Pashazadeh, which is his name. So I got to introduce him because I was the only one who could pronounce his name. And but he's an amazing guy. He's been there for 50 years. He's chairman of a lot of the key Islamic organizations of the former Soviet Union states and the Council of Islamic States and in the Caucasus, and holds many positions. He's considered one of the top leaders, Islamic leaders in the world. He's so open. He hosted us yesterday. He talks with reverence towards Judaism and towards Israel.
Do they realize how volatile their neighborhood is? Do they realize what's happening now with Iran? And we'll talk about, obviously, the President of the United States and the Prime Minister and their plans. We'll talk about that. Does he realize that Turkey would love to take over the region? Do they realize the volatility of what's happening next door?
Well, they have a good relationship with Turkey. Turkey did assist them in the war as well. Turkey has a lot of influence, being the large country on its border, but they have maintained an independent stance in the time when everybody else in the time of the war in Gaza, etc., broke relations. They did not. They continued to purchase from Israel and to sell to Israel. They speak openly of the relationship and the importance of it and how much Israel has to offer them in terms of high tech and helping them build an alternative economy to just oil and gas. So do they realize it? 100%. Does the Sheikh al-Islam, who attends international conferences, sees it? They don't respect the extremism. They don't allow any imam to preach in Azerbaijan who is not trained in Azerbaijan. I mean, you can't have any foreign trained imams who are indoctrinated in the more extreme factors or aspects of religion or view of the religion. And they have cameras in all of the mosques to be able to monitor what the speeches are and how that the message of moderation is continued. The young people speak very highly. We met with Jewish students on the campus. They don't even know what anti-Semitism means. I mean, they know the definition, but never experienced anything in their classrooms, nor anti-Israel manifestations.
Yeah.
Because it's not something you can take for granted, and that's why we go and we help strengthen it. And also, we should note that Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Azerbaijan, mostly the majority in Uzbekistan, in Samarkand and Bukhara, saved hundreds of thousands of Jews during World War II, or it gave them safe sanctions, safe haven. And we were the first to honor them many years ago. And they said that no one ever had recognized what they did. Many of them were coming from Russia. People have been sent to Siberia, went there, but others who were just escaping. And of course, the population, the Bukharan population, is very large in Israel, and there's about 100,000 in Queens. That is part of Uzbekistan. So this could be the next front of the Abraham Accords. I hope it is. They already have diplomatic relations with Israel, but we want to expand the economic ties. They want to do so. They want to benefit from Israel's high tech and see how they can build cooperative efforts and relationships. When you walk away, you feel that, there is hope for the world. There's some sane place. And we should reward them by having tourism and people who do business and to have connections to them.
Do Israelis travel there?
There are 21 flights a week between Azerbaijan and Israel. As you remember, there used to be 13 flights a day to Turkey. Now that Turkey's out of business, Azerbaijan, Azeri Air, as it's called, and UAE Airlines picked up the slack. But now they used to have one flight, not even every day. Now they're up to 20 flights a week, and very committed to expanding it. They want the tourism from Israel. They want to bring tourists to Israel, and they spoke about this very openly. They look at the high tech sector and see all the things from which they could benefit. It's it's an amazing story, and the Armenian lobby in the United States is very tough on them, even though the government Armenian no longer is and accepts the agreement and agrees that the matter is resolved. There are people here still who do not accept that arrangement. But generally in Congress there's a greater and greater understanding, and hopefully that will increase, and not at the expense of anybody else. But it could be the core of, because it's a buffer to Russia, it's a buffer to the Belt and Road Initiative. It encircles Iran when you put all of the pieces together. So it has vital strategic interest.
And they're next door to two, some might argue three regimes that want to take over the entire region. It's really it's a rough situation. And by the way, why does Russia concentrate so much on the Ukraine? We're in the midst of a 4-year war. But why are they not invading places like Azerbaijan and countries more on the south side, if in fact his goal is to, expand the Russian presence as much as possible?
They do want to expand Russian influence there, and they're constantly trying. But they took the other side. They backed Armenia, even though Iran backed them as well in the war. But the Russians try to play both sides. They have trade with Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijan recognizes this is the biggest country in the region. They have to deal with them, and they have to trade with them. Turkey is also a very big country with big air force, and so they try to have decent relations with all of them, but not at the sacrifice of Israel. Never pulled back on their relationship with Israel.
They have to have a strong military, I'm assuming.
They have a relatively strong military. That's why they were victorious in this last war in Karabakh. But they, I don't think on the international standards it makes the top 5 or 6.
Right.
Russia does covet the oil and gas and does have designs on it, but the Kazakhs and the Uzbeks and the Azeris in particular are very democratically oriented. They have a fierce sense of independence and would strongly resist any attempt. They know, even though the president succeeded his father, the fact is that they built a largely democratic or a free society. People suffer no religious persecution or coercion. Christians function freely. We had a meeting with the Sheikh al-Islam, the head of the Muslim community, and I described, and included in the group were several rabbis, Christian leaders, and leaders of other Muslim sects in Azerbaijan, or sectors in Azerbaijan. So it's done in a cooperative and open spirit.
Interesting. It's America's one and only Jewish Moments in the Morning radio program. Heard and listeners-sponsored digital radio around the world at NachumSegal.com and the Nachum Segal Network, and of course the beloved NSN app. Malcolm Hoenlein with us from Israel. Weekly update time. We'll get to Trump and Netanyahu in a second. One last thing, Malcolm. I'm just curious. I know it's minutia. Why has Putin met with Rabbi Lazar so often over the last few weeks?
Well, maybe he likes him, and he wants to make sure that he'll get his matzah for Pesach.
So is it just that he's always meeting with him, but now social media picks it up, and now we all know about it around the world?
Well, there's also the PR aspects, and there are, the community in Russia is still an important one, and the communication with them, which has continued throughout. And Putin has always seemed to have had some sort of a warm spot, at least in my discussions with him, about the Jewish community and his personal ties that go back to his childhood. So I think in terms of the substance, I'm sure Rabbi Lazar raised issues. There may be shortage, there may be particular concerns that have come up, but I think it's an ongoing relationship.
All right, let's get to the president and the prime minister. The prime minister, the way it was described among many in the press, ran to the United States to have what seemed to be an urgent get-together with the president of the United States. Was the purpose of the prime minister's trip to make sure that the president of the United States would not encourage a deal with Iran and instead do whatever needs to be done militarily to benefit Israel against Iran?
Well, I haven't had a chance yet to speak personally with the president. I have spoken with others, and so these are my assumptions. The prime minister wanted this meeting. Remember, it's the 7th within a year. This is unprecedented. It was different in the sense that he didn't have the big entrance from the front portal, but from the back, and no big press conferences, because it was a very serious subject, and I think they wanted to focus on that. I think the prime minister's agenda was, one, to share new intelligence that Israel's come up with, what the Iranians are planning and what they're doing. And they hint at it, that they've developed new missiles, that they covered up their nuclear plants, in anticipation of a potential strike. And I think he went there to encourage him not to take the word of these guys who have lied consistently and all the time on the previous agreements, but to make it a hard and fast thing that will stop the nuclear advancement. They have the capacity to enrich still. They have the capacity to stockpile then, and they want to retain that. But also, Israel has a second agenda item, which should be a big concern to the U.S. as well, and that is Iran's ballistic missile program, which is very dangerous and very advanced. They have deployed some missiles. Not everything was destroyed, or all the launching pads, and they're threatening to hit the United States, and they're threatening to hit Israel, which would be enough reason for them to be concerned and to be prepared to act against it. I think that the president may be bringing in another aircraft carrier group into the region. I think is a big move. It sharply increases the military capacity. There was a big maneuver in Eilat by Israeli forces. There are a lot of other things that are going on that, indicate that military preparedness is being enhanced all the time. But there do appear to be differences about approach. I'm not sure it's so much on substance as it is on style and approach about what you do and how you approach the Iranians. Do you give them a tripwire? Do you give them a real exit potential? Look, nobody wants a war that is not necessary. You have to be either an arms merchant or crazy to want to see a war where so many people could be hurt. We saw the tens of thousands who died and thousands more who were injured in the original campaign, war campaign. So the stakes are very high, and I think the U.S. is taking it somewhat slow and giving the Ayatollahs the opportunity to produce. I think regime change is increasingly spoken about and finally talked about the ability to keep open all the options. I don't want to go into the details of them, but the military buildup, the fact that Israel is on military preparedness, that we've seen planes landing with munitions, that the other countries in the region are certainly on edge, to put it mildly. Many have barred U.S. from using their airspace, including Saudi Arabia, Azerbaijan, Jordan. Many of them have, but it may not mean much in a real time of a real war.
Well, I mean, what everyone's most curious about, whether in fact this war is going to happen. And as we discussed last week, whether the aircraft carriers are simply a deterrent or a veiled threat or however you want to call it. But you raised something that's really interesting, because our impression was that Netanyahu's coming here with the thought in mind that really there are two avenues. One being, some type of deal, which obviously Trump must be a different Trump. Remember last term, he would never even consider a deal with Iran. It's like a different president, the way he's handling this, or at least the way he's considering, giving them that out. And of course, the second avenue being military intervention. But the third piece, do you think regime change and its potential was a big topic with Netanyahu and Trump? And is there any way that either of them thinks that can be done without military intervention?
So it's a very good question, and there are many answers to it. I do believe it's a subject of discussion. Even military intervention, you don't do it unless you know what the outcome is going to be or likely to be. You can't always guarantee it, but Iran does have the RGC, they have the Basij, they have the regular army, they have some capacity, not a lot. I think nobody believes that they could win a war, but the bravado with which they've been speaking lately, is, I think, a cover for their fear. And many of the leaders have left the country, or a number of them have left the country. A number of people have defected from Basij and other units, which is a sign we always look for. So on the military front, there are possibilities. It could be limited. It could be more expansive. Remember, Israel still controls the airspace over it because they destroyed the radar systems. They may have restored some, but I doubt that they've restored most of them. And they'd have to, weigh very carefully the steps in that regard. The second, and Iran is a military power, and they have a navy, not great. They don't have a great air force. Most of their planes are old and dated, and so, which is why Israel is able to get ascendancy so quickly in the skies over Tehran. The question of regime change, which people didn't want to talk about all along, people said that's not our agenda. We're only here to guarantee people their rights and to end the nuclear threat. And now the fact that the president and others seem to be talking about it and recognize that anything short of a real clean sweep is going to mean that we're going to be back to the same old thing. that we're going to repeat it again and again. Yeah. And some of them even make comments to that effect about how they could, they'll bring it back and they'll resurrect, and and they lie. And they are willing to obfuscate things in order to get out of this bind that they're in right now. Remember, the economy is in ruins. There's no water, no electricity, or very limited. That there are many observers and many people who are watching it closely who've seen the currency collapse, the economy collapse. So it's very hard for Iran to fight a war on that basis and to get people who are really committed. They called for a demonstration. People did come out for the demonstration. I'm not sure it's the numbers that they expected. So the regime is doing everything to try and assert itself and its continuity. But the Ayatollah is old. His son doesn't enjoy wide respect and support, though he would be accepted if he was named. There's nobody that really is a fully unifying force. And when you have a country of such diversity as Iran, with half the population being Afghans, being Azeri, as I pointed out, 30 million, 12 million Baluchis, and the Kurds and everybody else, there was a meeting proposed this week of leaders of the opposition. But in fact, that meeting, there were too many internal differences, and they were not able to convene. I think they will still try to convene and to coordinate, not to determine who next leader, that will be done by elections, but to create some sort of an interim body which would be representative of the people and enable them to come out of the war, not in a hobbled frame and, with a lot of victims, but as is in a more unified way, that to achieve the goal of getting rid of him and to look to the future.
When do we find out if the Prime Minister had a successful trip to Washington?
Oh, that is a very good question. I'm sure someday there will be cabinet meetings. I mean, I know there will be, and we're meeting the Prime Minister on Sunday, so I think that we might have a better idea of what his mood is, what his assessment, but I'm not sure it was meant to be conclusive. I think it was a chance for the Prime Minister to explain to him the concerns, the latest intelligence.
I wonder why he couldn't do that over the phone,
You can't talk about these things over the phone. Everything gets intercepted, and you need the personal chemistry that sometimes comes with it. It can work for you or against you, but it is very important, the personal contact, and one thing, it also sends a message to the region. When the president receives the Prime Minister of Israel 7 times in a year, that sends a message about the nature of the alliance and the relationship.
That's why regime
change regime change is easy to say. It's one of those rallying cries, but you ask people to define it. Does Reza Pahlavi, some who are very much against him, some are very much for him, but he does have certain status. He called for demonstrations and millions came out. He called for demonstrations the next night at the later hour and they came out. So he has some influence. It could be default and it could be original, but we don't know. So the regime change, when people say to me, well, I'll just get rid of the Ayatollah and stuff. You kill the Ayatollah and you don't have in place what's going to succeed. You could end up with a worse situation than you had before.
You agree with me that first-term Trump would never have gone down this road of a possible agreement or with Iran?
I'm not sure he still wants to go down the road of it.
I know, but it seems like it's so focused now on this.
But he feigns a lot. Yes, that is true. I think he would like to avoid
military
that kind of confrontation, translating into a hot military war, right. Even though it would not involve troops on the ground for any reason that I understand and that I can see. So it could be done without that, an aerial war and maybe other troops, personal troops involved, mostly the local people, that would take it over and then lead to elections in a reasonable time.
Did you see the anti-Semitism Super Bowl commercial?
I did.
What did you think?
Then I saw it.
What did you think of it? You would
I
have,
think we had
you would have done it differently? Is that safe to say?
That is safe to say.
And speaking of sports, I saw that the Israeli team was actually robbed. There was some big theft of their passports and other stuff. I haven't heard a word since that initial report. Is that something they're talking about in Israel, or are we suspecting?
Oh, yes. Big issue because it was that bobsled team, which has been a focus of a lot of attention, even though they know they're not going to win, but they are at least involved, and that Israel has a representation. And they were sharing an apartment, and somebody broke in, stole their equipment, stole their money, stole a lot of their things, and their uniforms even. And so they were left bereft, and everybody was scrambling, I think, to replace it so they could compete. They did. And I think that they qualified at least to be in the next games, even though they didn't qualify in the top position, which is surprising for a bobsled team from Israel.
Shocker. We'll wrap up with Gaza, but I just since I and many know nothing about that region of the world, I'm just curious if you have any analysis regarding the landslide victory in Japan this week.
I think it's part of a worldwide phenomenon that we're seeing, and people are taking harsher positions because of the economic pressures people are under. They want, especially young people, they want change. And those who misinterpret the New York election, since we've been discussing it from way before the election, right. And I said, don't jump on the polls and don't look at even the results I think are significantly wrong. And I've met with young people who were involved in mobilizing for Mamdani, and they said, listen, we're not anti-Israel. We don't know where this came from, but we did it because we can't afford our apartments, because he promised us feasibility and what was the word that they used to describe the affordability. And we were arguing about Israel, which was not the subject, and the vast majority of them did not cite that. They cited Vine, that they looked at the other candidates as being tired old people, retreads, and they saw the younger alternative. So we shouldn't jump to conclusion. We have to work very hard. We should be registering people, getting out to vote, preparing people for demonstrations if necessary. If, the internet is afire because of the Iran war, and that Iran is manipulating a lot of it with their bots and infecting the internet, the different sites with putting the messages even on the White House information line and message line, where they pack the responses to reflect their interests. So it's people have to be heard. This is a time when we should be out every day, because there isn't an election now, but there's an election very soon in November, which is tomorrow. Right. And we have to make sure that not just the governor's election gets attention, but the gubernatorial race is just one. The state senates and all of the other positions that are going to be filled are going to be very important as well, to send a message and to build for the future.
Finally, and I was hoping that one of the reasons he did want to meet face-to-face, meeting the prime minister with the president, was to give the president a dose of reality about what's happening in Gaza. As the president continues, yesterday was a big day for this, continues to express how he's going to, lead this force to rebuild Gaza and turn it into the Riviera and everything else. And Netanyahu would love to see the enemy who completely dominate Gaza right now at least be disarmed, if not completely expelled from the area. Where is the reality? Somewhere between the prime minister and the president, I assume, is the truth in this entire scenario. And will the president continue on this road where he's convening meetings? There's one scheduled for the 19th, where he's convening meetings where he is actually, thinking that, practically speaking, Gaza could be rebuilt.
I do think the president wants to see Gaza rebuilt. Remember, Israel holds almost 50% of it, and they are cleaning out constantly the tunnels, and they're having clashes as they discover still terrorists who have either come in or were there They had living accommodations in some of these tunnels. They had, resources there. The constant finding of weapons depots, both there and in Lebanon, of Hezbollah, tell us that this is a very dangerous and cancerous situation. We should remember that the president feigns a lot. He'll say, it's like a tennis player who feigns that it makes believe it's going to hit to one side and he hits to the other side. We don't know what the president is going to do. Nobody really has a hard line, and he may not have made up his mind finally yet as to what he's going to do. He said that if they continue the executions, which they are killing people, young people. That the gunmen went into the hospitals and shot up the protesters who were taken in for gun wounds, and other people who committed suicide. Just stop. So we have to remember that we're not dealing with people who tell you exactly what they really mean, or even close to it. That sometimes it's a way of manipulating a willing press, which is ready to publish everything and anything, but hardly thinks about the consequences or the real meaning of what they're publishing. So people have to be educated, have to be aware, which is why we do this show and talk about all the developments. Each one of these, as you can see, is so complex, so hard to just take a few sentences or a few seconds and say, okay, this is what the president intends to do.
But I just want to know if the prime minister takes any of this seriously. When the president,
absolutely.
When the president speaks about rebuilding Gaza, the prime minister actually can get into that space.
Well, the prime minister agreed to serve on the Board of Peace. It's convening this week. Leaders are coming there, not all. But they are taking it seriously. And what we're seeing is the erosion of the UN on many fronts. This is normally something that the UN would have done, and I think the president is trying to send a message. The UN is no longer a reliable vehicle for all of this. I think if he feels that if they can do it seriously, but the idea of giving Turkey and Qatar the education portfolio tells you that they don't really understand the nature of the parties that we're dealing with. The UAE doing it, the UAE showing how they changed their textbooks, as did even Egypt and Saudi Arabia, but the UAE primarily. That would be a very positive sign, and not to bring in and empower Turkey and Qatar more. They're Muslim brother states. They push their agendas there and here in the United States and around the world. We have to, every revelation that comes out from kindergarten to 12th grade to campuses, to communities, to Hollywood, to medical profession, to other professions, every single sector affected by it. That's the nature of the enemy that we're facing. It's a poisonous one, and they seek to inculcate and will use any means possible. And the internet gives them a way to do it anonymously and to create fictions such as the numbers that are pro-Israel and stuff. It is not as bad as it seems. It is bad. It is diminished, and it is of concern that we have to educate a generation. We have to reach out to them in new and creative ways, and in the ways that they listen. That's why people analyze the ads and everything, because we know we're going to be repeated 100,000 times and will be readjusted, because that's how people get information.
Yeah, understood. Enjoy Shabbat in the holy city of Jerusalem.
That is a guarantee. As soon as you say Shabbat in Yerushalayim, unless Hashem something's wrong, it's wonderful. People are confident. I don't see any sense of panic. Look at the shekel; it becomes stronger and stronger. Unbelievable, too strong to my taste. for those of us who have to make purchases here and stuff, our dollar is worth less and less. Hopefully, with the adjustment in interest rates and other things, it'll regain some. But there are people, experts, talking of it going even below 3.
I know, it's amazing.
It's now the lowest in 40 years.
Some realtors, as an incentive, are letting people pay on the old rate, which is unbelievable.
Absolutely,
they'll let you pay on 3.4, 3.5, as this is now on some markets already 3.07, which is unbelievable. Anyway. Whoever would have dreamt that. Enjoy Shabbat in Jerusalem. We'll speak Bezrat Hashem next week.
Yes, Hashem, everybody. And I want to give a mazel tov to the Hadass family, Jerry and Mira Ades, and to the new parent, the other grandparents, the Rabbi Leibowitz, Ari Leibowitz and his wife, on the birth of our great-grandchild, to Gabriella and Zachariah Leibowitz in Teaneck, New Jersey. And Mitzvah Hashem, I'm coming back for the bris, and we should only have simchas to celebrate.
Amen. Big mazel tov, to say the least. Malcolm Hoenlein with us, of course. Weekly update here at JM in the AM.